Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video, basically have this studio project to design an infill site, which includes a design for a private dwelling along with a public program space, while forming this cohesive relationship between the two spaces. So I've done a bit of working on it after a week, and here are my plans. So I got a few quick plans, nothing too crazy, and then I got my Rhino model. This is a quick little 3D massing model of what it looks like. So we're gonna see how it goes, and hopefully they like the crit. Alright, so we just got back from crit, and this will explain how it went. Not good. Not good. Okay, so a few things I learned from that crit were, one, to focus on not overcrowding the space. So finding a relationship between the site itself and its surroundings. So what you saw there was a whole huge block, nothing really looked connected. It all looked like separate floors that were just made up out of nowhere, like unintentional. Another thing is how the occupants in the space are going to orient themselves around the buildings at different times of the day. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the sun path diagrams for south-facing houses, so what the south-facing side is, and in this case I had the river on the back side. So those are the two things I wanted to focus on and put most of my program spaces around those areas, because those are more pleasing and will be the most efficient when it comes to maximizing things like sunlight and space. Along with those program spaces, my main program was the studio and classroom, because that's what I focused on. When the public would enter, they'd be able to study and learn. And originally I had my design on the corner, not touching the other building, secluded, and it would kind of isolated. There'd be no windows, no sunlight, and that's not pleasing when you're learning. So then I focused and pushed it towards the river, which would create a nice and way better view, and the studio space would still stay in the central, connecting 2 stories up all the way to the private spaces. So that's why I thought a bit more intentionally, rather than just overcrowding the space and not thinking about how I want the viewers to look and feel when they're in the space. So moving on to my parti. Now parti is basically one drawing that shows the overall relationship or theme of your project, like a thesis in English. So my parti looks like this. There's the public space on one side and the private space on the other. So although they look separate, they're connected by this central studio, which I wanted to show represents productivity. So the public space would be studying down below and the private would be studying above, and they would both be connected by that space, looking down and up, letting sunlight in as well from the south facing side, and it would create that nice ambient environment. The last thing I want to touch on are massing models. So you can either do them digitally or physically. I had showed to do them online because of these times right now, so I did it on Rhino. Essentially, right here, it looks almost identical to my parti, which is why it's so important to do parti. You gotta do one. Just one drawing summarizing your whole concept, that's it. It'll make it flow much better. As you can see, the form of the building looks so much cleaner. Everything relates more compared to the other one, where there was just no relationship, everything was out of place. So that's why I'm emphasizing partis. Then you can focus on your program spaces and how that relates to the site. So orienting toward the sun, in this case as well, I had the water. All those things you want to take into account to create a space that really maximizes its surroundings and its relationships.
Hey, so developing an architectural idea requires a lot of artistry and concept work, but it also requires a lot of technical thinking. And that's where I was struggling with originally. So I started out with a lot of rough sketches, and I tried to make as many notes as possible for my brainstorming process. But a really key part of my design actually ended up being the site and the site plan. So we were given 6 sites to choose from, all in Canada, for this studio project, and I personally chose one in St. John's that was built into a hillside. Now that was important because I would have to excavate into that hillside myself to decide where I wanted my house to go and what the structure would look like. Based off of that, I actually ended up finding a lot of information. Some of it was thanks to a Rhino file that my TA actually provided us with to get a sense of the terrain and topography of the site, but a lot of it also came from Google Earth and Google Maps. And another one was OpenStreetMaps, which was really helpful, but I think it was really a mix between those 3. I finally wanted to incorporate a couple of characteristics I noticed from those into my actual site plan. So I think I used the topography lines that I'd figured out from those, and then I also used a label identifier to kind of show how different nearby facilities affected my site. So there was a harbor, for example, and a university very close by. And then finally, I actually added a sun path diagram because I wanted to calculate the way the sun would be acting and how it would be traveling on the coordinates of my site. I sat down to draft my ideas and I was very overwhelmed because I originally started with AutoCAD and I had no idea for average room dimensions and things like that. So instead, I switched over to Procreate, which gave me a much better hands-on feel, and it also featured a great grid assistant where I could imagine that every square on the grid was just a square meter. So that let me brainstorm a little roughly, but it still had some refinement, so I could use it to actually build more polished versions of my drafts. And following that, while I was working on those drafts, I was also making this model in 3D on Rhino. I found modeling it to be really useful. If I could, I would have done the 3D model with like physical materials because I find it so much easier to work with, but it would just take a really long time and I just did not have that kind of time frame for this project. So I ended up trying to learn Rhino instead, and that really helped to get me a sense of the windows and the light placements that I was looking at for this site, which is great, super helpful. I'll be definitely expanding on that for the future, but I'm not sure how yet. So we'll see how that goes. But that's basically the gist of it, and that's how I got the majority of my technical drafts done without crying. Although there was a little bit of crying, but that's okay.
We were given the option to either hand draft or draft the deliverables digitally, and I chose to do this project digitally because I was eager to learn new mediums of representation. We learned Photoshop Illustrator for our multimedia class last semester, but we wouldn't learn Rhino SketchUp until next year. While I did choose to do things digitally, I initially spent about a week brainstorming parties, elevations, floor plans on my physical sketchbook. My sense of scale is not too good, so I found that using a dotted paper for scale was really helpful. I looked up sun path diagrams and inspiration online, but I did not start drafting until 1 week into the project. Even when I was drafting on AutoCAD, I still found myself going back on paper. However, I'm not totally trashing on digital drafting because there's so much benefits to it, such as it saves paper and it helps you with easy and really quick edits. Site plans and sun path diagrams were convenient to do online as well.
It's me again. I just wanted to say thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. We're probably going to come back with another video regarding the final project, like the final and crit of the project. But thank you guys for watching. Have a good night. Bye.